Greetings, shalom, peace, peace to you all. My name's Caleb, and I'm here to talk to you all about spiritual warfare. I'm a Christian. I believe in Jesus. I believe that a man is justified by God's grace as a means of faith, namely because of Christ and his sacrifice on the cross. I have some controversial things to say, and I have a feeling that not many will agree, and the thing is that's normal. Don't trust somebody based on their outward appearance. You might look at me, hear the way I talk. Trust nothing. You should verify everything I say by the Bible. I believe the Bible is the sufficient Word of God. I believe we have everything we need given to us by the Lord. I believe Jesus is God. And I believe that when Jesus died on the cross, when he said, "It is finished," he meant it. And that we're saved by grace alone. It's a means of faith. Faith as in trust, placing your trust in his work. In Matthew chapter 7, Jesus says that there will be many on that day that say to him, Jesus, "Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in your name? Have we not done miracles? Have we not done many wondrous deeds? Have we not cast out demons?" And Jesus said, "I will say to them plainly, I never knew you." Notice the emphasis on the word never. Jesus didn't say, "I once knew you." Jesus did not say, "I used to know you." He says very plainly, very concisely, very simply, "I never knew you," implying these individuals never did the will of his Father. Jesus goes on to say, "Those that do the will of his Father shall inherit the kingdom of heaven." What's the will of the Father? Now, you will talk to some individuals who claim the will of the Father is to obey the law, but clearly that is not the case. If we could somehow earn salvation, the phrase "earn salvation" is very self-contradictory because salvation implies that we have been saved. How can you earn being saved? Either you are saved by grace, as in you are saved through unmerited favor. That's what grace is. It's unmerited favor. Mercy is unmerited kindness. They're similar, but they're not the same. But anyways, you're either saved by grace only, or you're not saved at all. And something that kind of stuck to me is, how can someone lose salvation? If it's possible to lose salvation, we would all lose it. We would all lose salvation if it were possible to lose it. In John 6:40, Jesus says that the will of the Father is to believe on the Son. It's very clear, it's very concise in the scriptures, in the Bible, that a man is saved by the work of Jesus on the cross and nothing else, by putting his faith, his trust in that work and nothing else. But back to spiritual warfare. What is spiritual warfare? What is the powers of this world, principalities? What are those things? Paul talks about spiritual warfare throughout his epistles. The Bible does not clearly say, nor does it clearly define what the enemy does, and I think that's because the enemy changes his tactics. I don't think he changes his goals. His goals are always the same. He prides around like a roaring lion, hoping to devour all. That's everybody. And he wants to take as many as he can with him. Now, I don't know exactly what hell is. I'm not going to claim exact understanding of the world that we live in because I'm a limited human being. But it's very clear to me that there are powers, there is wickedness, there are evil forces in work. And these powers that exist, and they clearly exist because their fruits are evident. The way I know they're here and they're real. Look at Jeffrey Epstein, Epstein Island. What happened on Epstein Island? What went down there? It's very clear, I think. There is an elite group of people, individuals, who do horrid things to children. And people like me are completely blind to it. We don't even realize it. We go about our day-to-day routine, schedule, life, and we never even consider the prospect that there are wicked powers. So I think when it talks about spiritual warfare in the epistles, and really I think throughout the whole Bible, I think it's a matter of how are you living your life in terms of being productive as a Christian, as a man who follows Jesus. Because I think it's very possible for you to be a very unproductive Christian and still be saved. It's true that a man is saved by grace through faith, and by no other means is there salvation. But it's very clear to me that human beings have free will. Because we have free will, that means we are given responsibility and ultimately accountability for the things we do in life. Notice how I say the things we do in life. If I, as a Christian, a professing Christian, go off and I murder somebody, and let's say I had very good reason, at least human reason, to do it, I don't think that takes away my salvation. Now, I'm not saying that it's good to murder. It's not. And there would be consequences for my actions. Just like there'd be consequences for my actions if I become addicted to drugs, alcohol, lust, gluttony, lots of other things that I don't really consider. Satan is real. He's a very real, personable entity. He is not omniscient. He's not all-knowing. He's not all-powerful. I don't think he can read your mind. He's a limited being. He's a creature. But he is real. And he hates you. And he hates me. And he wants us all to die. Which is why I think it's very, very important that we as Christians really start picking up our crosses and following Jesus. Now, I don't think following Jesus and doing good works saves you, or is even evidence that you are saved. The reason is, if I go back to Matthew 7, we have these individuals who, by all accounts, were saved. These individuals, these persons who would do miracles. They would command demons. And yet Jesus said, I never knew you. The reason he said I never knew you is because these persons were not saved. They never put their faith in the work of the cross. Life's like smoke. It's hard to grasp, constantly changes. Whenever you think you have it figured out, it slips through your fingers. I believe in Ecclesiastes it talks about that. Most translations will read, life is vanity, but it's not saying it's meaningless. It's saying it's difficult to understand. Kind of like smoke. It has no form. But you can see it, you can see where it goes for a bit, and then it just disappears. It dissipates. Spiritual warfare. Every time you sit down and you try to pray, and you can barely pray for even a minute, and then you lose your concentration, you go back to your daily tasks, and yet you can watch a video for hours. You can play games, you can eat food, you can drink, you can do all these other things with such great focus and joy, but you find it difficult to pray. I don't know why it's difficult to pray, but clearly it is. And because of that, I can't help but think and imagine that prayer is important, and it does affect the world that we cannot see. There are colors on the spectrum that our eyes are not able to detect. And because of that, I am convinced that there is a realm beyond the physical that affects the physical. And I believe that the physical affects the spiritual. Friends, put your faith in Jesus' work on the cross. Jesus really is alive. He is the Son of God. Friends, I know that you've been told many different things by many different people, and you have many different reasons to believe that Jesus isn't God. But I want you to just for a minute, just for a second, just supersede all of that and entertain the thought without necessarily accepting it as truth. Why is Jesus the most talked about person in all of history? Why was the calendar made after him? Why does every single culture, almost every culture and religion today, speak about Jesus and give testimony about Jesus? Islam speaks about Jesus. The Buddha speaks about Jesus. They come up with terms like Christ consciousness. Everyone seems to talk about and bear witness about Jesus. But when we go to the words that are verifiable by history, by manuscripts, by evidence, it's documented as early as 70 AD and earlier, where we go to the actual words of Jesus, which we have, which is insane. That's its own miracle, I think. Jesus says that he is the way, the truth, and the life, and that nobody can come to the Father except through him. In Hebrews 1:6 and onward, the author is speaking for God. God is bearing witness about Jesus, the Son. And in the verses above 6, it proceeds to narrate that, and this is God speaking through the author, and of the Son he says, "O God, your kingdom lasts forever and ever." Most people, when they attack Jesus, they attack his divinity / the Trinity, and I think the Trinity is biblical. I think it's very clearly taught throughout the scriptures. Even though we have many bad translations of the Bible, like the New World Translation, where it completely tries to scrub out Jesus' equality and divinity with God. And while people will go ahead and try and quote Jesus saying the Father is greater than I, they also love to leave out the quote where it says Jesus and the Father are one. And then Jesus goes on to do the things that only God can do, like forgiving sins And in Revelations, Jesus calls himself the first and the last, the beginning, the end, the Alpha and the Omega. Who does that sound like to you? I've heard arguments that God gave authority to Jesus. Here's the thing. The things Jesus do go beyond being given authority. They go far beyond just giving someone permission to do certain things. I'm in the military, and I'll give a parable for a military person. A platoon commander can go ahead and tell his platoon sergeant to execute a mission, right? But the platoon sergeant is not the platoon commander. You know, he's not an officer. He's a non-commissioned officer, or maybe a staff non-commissioned officer. But ultimately, he is not a commissioned officer. And if he tries to say he's a commissioned officer, he is guilty of lying and impersonating a commissioned officer. That is a article that is punishable by the UCMJ. All right. If Jesus does certain things that only God can do, beyond just being given authority and being given permission. For example, in Isaiah, it speaks about Jesus coming. It says, "O wonderful counsel, O wonderful counselor, mighty God, everlasting Father, Prince of Peace." Who does that sound like to you? I don't speak with authority. I have no authority. I'm a man. I'm a fellow homeless man who's hungry, and I have been given bread, and I seek to show other people this bread. Jesus calls himself the bread of life. Understand what Jesus is doing here. Jesus is not saying that God has given him the bread of life that can be given to others. Jesus calls himself the bread of life, the sustainer of all people. In fact, Jesus says that he is going to judge all people. Which is interesting because God says he's going to judge all people. Throughout the Old Testament, God says that he is the final judge and that he will account all people for their deeds. And yet Jesus goes on to say that he's going to do that. He doesn't say he's doing that for God the Father. He says he is doing it alone, that the Father will do no judging, that Jesus himself will do it all. That's something only God could do. And either the scriptures are contradicting themselves or our understanding has been incorrect. I've been talking for a little bit, so I'll leave it at this. It doesn't take good works. It doesn't take evidence of good works. It doesn't take evidence of a changed heart. It takes the smallest, tiniest, most minuscule amount of trust. Of placing one's trust in Jesus. Saying, I don't think I can save myself, but I think Jesus can. I have faith. I have trust. I shall trust in his work. That's all that's necessary to attain salvation forever. Go in peace.